Captain Jake Morrison stared at the screens in front of him. The coffee in his cup had gone cold hours ago, but he did not care. Something was wrong with the deep space sensors today. They were picking up signals that should not exist. "Lisa, come look at this," he called to Dr. Lisa Grant, who was working at her desk across the room. She was the best language expert on Epsilon 7, their monitoring station far from Earth. Lisa walked over and looked at the strange patterns on the screen. "What am I looking at, Jake?" "I don't know. The computer says it's a signal, but it's not like anything we've seen before. It's been going on for 3 hours now." Lisa sat down and started typing on her keyboard. She had spent years studying how different languages worked. If this was a real message from someone, she would figure it out. "The pattern keeps repeating," she said after a few minutes. "Look here. This part shows up every few seconds. That usually means it's important." Jake nodded. He had been in space for 15 years, but he had never seen anything like this. Could it be from Earth? No way. The signal is coming from outside our solar system. Way outside. Lisa's fingers moved fast across the keyboard. "Jake, I think this might be from aliens." The word hung in the air between them. Aliens. Real aliens. After all these years of searching and listening, they might have finally found proof that humans were not alone in the universe. "Are you sure?" Jake asked. Lisa pointed at the screen. "Look at the math here. The signal uses prime numbers in a sequence that any smart species would recognize. But the way it's arranged is totally different from how humans would do it. This has to be from someone else." Jake picked up his radio. "This is Captain Morrison. To Earth Command. We have a situation up here." It took 20 minutes for the signal to reach Earth and for Admiral Kate Sullivan to call them back. When her face appeared on the screen, she looked tired. She had been dealing with budget cuts and political problems all week. "What's going on out there, Jake?" "Admiral, we think we're receiving a message from aliens. Dr. Grant is working on translating it now." Admiral Sullivan's tired look disappeared. Instantly. "Say that again." "We have what appears to be an alien transmission. It's been broadcasting for hours." "I'll be right there," the Admiral said. "Don't tell anyone else about this yet. We need to understand what we're dealing with first." Over. The next 6 hours, Lisa worked without stopping. She fed the signal through every translation program they had. Slowly, patterns began to emerge. The message was mathematical at first, but then it started to include pictures and simple words. "I'm getting something," Lisa said. Her voice was shaky with excitement. "They're showing us their star system. And Jake, they're asking for help." The first clear word that came through was help. Then came dying and attack. The pictures showed planets with cities, and then the same planets. "On fire. They're being attacked by someone," Lisa continued. "Look at this part. They're showing us their people. They look like trees made of crystal, but they're alive. And here, these are the attackers. They're called the Vorthans." Jake looked at the images Lisa had decoded. The tree-like aliens looked peaceful. Their cities were beautiful, full of art and gardens. But the images of the Vorthans showed giant warships and destroyed worlds. "How many of them are left?" Jake asked. Lisa worked for another hour before she found the answer. "Not many. They say the Vorthans have been attacking them for 20 years. Most of their worlds are gone. They only have a few planets left." The message continued to play, and more details became clear. The aliens called themselves the Zephyrian Coalition. They had never fought a war before the Vorthans came. They were scientists and artists, not soldiers. They had tried to surrender, but the Vorthans wanted to kill them all. "They're broadcasting this message to the whole galaxy," Lisa said. "They're hoping anyone, will hear it and help them." Jake felt a cold anger growing in his chest. Someone was trying to wipe out an entire species of peaceful aliens. How long do they have? Based on what they're showing us, maybe 6 months. The Vorthans are preparing for a final attack on their last few worlds. Admiral Sullivan arrived at the station 12 hours later with a team of experts. They confirmed what Lisa had discovered. The message was real, and the Zephyrians were running out of time. We have a choice to make, Admiral Sullivan said to her team. We can ignore this message and stay hidden, or we can help them. Commander Nick Davis, the Admiral's Chief of Staff, looked worried. Admiral, if we respond, we'll be telling the whole galaxy that Earth exists. We could be putting our own people in danger. And if we don't respond, we'll be letting an entire species die when we could have saved them, the Admiral replied. Room was quiet for a long moment. Everyone knew this decision would change everything for humanity. What do we know about these Vorthans? Admiral Sullivan asked. Lisa pulled up the information they had gathered. They're a military empire. They've been conquering worlds for hundreds of years. They don't seem interested in making deals or taking prisoners. They just destroy everything. And the Zephyrians? They're exactly what they seem like. Peaceful, smart, artistic. They've never hurt anyone. They're being killed just because the Vorthans want their worlds. Admiral Sullivan stood up and walked to the window. She could see Earth in the distance, blue and beautiful. Somewhere out there, innocent people were about to die. Gentlemen, we're going to answer that distress call, she said finally. Start preparing the fleets. We're going to war. General Ryan Hayes had seen many wars in his 40 years of military service, but nothing like this. His office was filled with maps of star systems he had never heard of before. Every screen showed ship positions, supply lines, and battle plans for humanity's first war against aliens. How long until the fleets are ready? He asked Colonel Amy Parker, who stood beside his desk studying the reports. 6 weeks, maybe 5 if we push hard, Amy replied. But General, are we really ready for this? We've never fought in space against aliens before. Ryan looked at the pictures of the Zephyrians that Lisa Grant had decoded from their message. They looked so peaceful, like living works of art. Amy, my grandfather fought in World War II. My father fought in Vietnam. I fought in the Middle East. Every Hayes has fought to protect innocent people. This is no different. Amy nodded, but she still looked worried. What about the Vorthans? We don't know much about them. We know enough, Ryan said. He pulled up a file on his computer. Dr. Ben Turner, their best alien expert, had been studying the Vorthan data for days. Ben says they evolved on a world with low gravity and thin air. They're probably weaker than us. Across the base, Captain Steve Collins was preparing his ship, the U.E.'s Vengeance. It was the newest and most powerful warship in the human fleet. Steve had commanded ships for 12 years, but this would be his first battle against aliens. How many ships will we have? Asked his second-in-command, Lieutenant Commander Lisa Rodriguez. 200 warships, plus support vessels, Steve answered. Admiral Sullivan is sending everything we have. Lisa was quiet for a moment. She had been thinking about strategy since they received the alien message. Steve, I've been reading about how other species fight wars. Most of them use energy weapons and shields. They try to disable enemy ships without destroying them. And that's not how humans fight. We don't try to disable enemies. We try to destroy them completely. Steve smiled. Lisa was right. Human military doctrine was simple. If someone threatened innocent people, you eliminated the threat. There was no middle ground dot in another part of the base. Dr. Ben Turner was working in his laboratory. He had spent days studying every piece of information about the Vorthans. What he found made him excited. General Hayes, you need to see this. Ben said over the radio. Ryan walked to the lab and found Ben looking at biological data on his computer. What did you find? The Vorthons evolved on a world that's nothing like Earth. Their gravity is about 1/3 of ours. Their atmosphere is mostly nitrogen with very little oxygen. They've never dealt with anything like the conditions that made humans strong. What does that mean for us? Ben pointed to a chart on his screen. It means that what we consider normal would be like living in hell for them. Our soldiers can probably move 3 times faster than theirs. Our ships are built to handle forces that would crush their vessels. Ryan felt a cold smile cross his face. The Vorthons had spent decades killing peaceful species. They had never faced anyone who could fight back. There's more, Ben continued. Look at their military tactics. They rely on technology to win battles. Energy shields, advanced computers, long-range weapons. They've never had to fight hand-to-hand or deal with enemies who could match their technology. And humans? Humans learned to fight on a world that tried to kill them every day. Earth is what scientists call a death world. Most species could not survive there for a week. We were born there. The implications were clear. The Vorthons had built their empire by intimidating species that had evolved on safe, peaceful worlds. They had never encountered anything like humans. Meanwhile, Admiral Sullivan was meeting with world leaders through video calls. The President of the United States, the Prime Minister of Britain, the leaders of China and Russia. All of them had to approve humanity's first interstellar war. Admiral, what are our chances? Asked the President. Good, sir. Very good. We have advantages the Vorthons don't expect, such as they don't know we exist, so they can't prepare for us. They've never fought anyone from a high-gravity world. And, sir, they've been committing genocide for decades. Our troops are going to be very motivated. The Chinese leader spoke up. What if we lose? What if they come to Earth? Admiral Sullivan had been thinking about that question for days. Sir, if we don't stop them now, they'll eventually find Earth anyway. Better to fight them on our terms than wait for them to choose the time and place. The meeting lasted 3 hours. In the end, all the world leaders agreed. Humanity would go to war. Back at the military base, the preparations continued around the clock. Soldiers trained for zero-gravity combat. Pilots practiced flying in conditions they had never experienced. Engineers worked to modify human weapons for use against alien technology. Colonel Amy Parker watched her troops training and felt proud. These were not just soldiers. They were the children of a world that had tested every generation with natural disasters, deadly weather, and dangerous animals. Every human alive was descended from people tough enough to survive Earth. Ma'am, said Sergeant Tony Mitchell, walking up to Amy, the troops want to know something. What's that, Sergeant? Are we really going to save those tree people? Amy looked at Tony. He was young, maybe 25, but his eyes were hard. He had grown up in Detroit, where life was tough. Like all humans, he had learned to fight for what mattered. Yes, Sergeant, we're going to save them. Good, Tony said. My little sister loves trees. She'd want us to help tree people. Amy smiled. That was humanity in a nutshell. They would travel across the galaxy to help strangers because it was the right thing to do. The final preparations took exactly 5 weeks. When Admiral Sullivan looked at the assembled fleet, she felt a mixture of pride and determination. 200 warships carrying 50,000 of humanity's finest soldiers were ready to answer the Zephyrian distress call. Admiral, said Captain Morrison, who had been promoted to Fleet Communications Officer, we just received another message from the Zephyrians. The Vorthons are moving faster than expected. The final attack will begin in 2 weeks. Admiral Sullivan nodded. Then we leave now. Send the word to all ships. Humanity is going to war. As the massive fleet prepared to depart Earth, no one could predict what would happen next. But every human aboard those ships knew one thing. They were not going to let an entire species die while they could prevent it. Captain Danny Brooks felt his stomach drop as his scout ship came out of hyperspace. The Kepler Prime system was supposed to be beautiful, with crystal cities floating in space around a blue-green planet. Instead, he saw a nightmare. 50 Vorthen. Warships surrounded the planet like hungry wolves. Their dark metal hulls gleamed with weapon ports and shield generators. Smaller ships were already bombing the crystal cities, turning them into clouds of glittering dust. "Captain, we're getting a signal from the planet," said his communications officer, Lieutenant Pete Adams. "It's the Zephyrians. They're begging for help." Danny looked at his scanner. 50 enemy ships against his 6 scouts. The smart thing would be to wait for the main fleet. But the Zephyrians were dying right now, and Danny had never been good at being smart. "All ships, this is Brooks. We're going in." "Sir, we're outnumbered 8-1, said Commander Kate Wilson over the radio. "Then it's a fair fight," Danny replied. "Attack pattern Alpha. Hit them hard and fast." The 6 human scout ships dove toward the Vorthen fleet like angry wasps. The Vorthens barely had time to react before the first missiles struck their shields. Danny had studied Vorthen battle tactics during the trip from Earth. They liked to fight at long range, using energy, weapons, and superior numbers. They were not ready for humans, who preferred to get close and personal. Ramming speed. Danny shouted as his ship's engines roared to full power. The other human ships followed his lead, charging straight at the much larger Vorthen vessels. Vorthens tried to stop them with energy beams, but human ships were built tough. They had to be, to survive launching from Earth's gravity well and dealing with solar radiation. The Vorthen weapons scratched their hulls, but did not stop them. Danny's ship slammed into the side of a Vorthen cruiser at full speed. The impact crushed the alien vessel's hull like an egg. Alarms screamed as both ships spun out of control, but Danny was already ejecting in his escape pod. "This is insane," screamed the Vorthen fleet commander over the radio. "They're destroying their own ships." What the Vorthens did not understand was that humans had been doing crazy things to win battles for thousands of years. Ramming enemy ships was just Tuesday for species that had invented kamikaze attacks and suicide bombers. Within minutes, the small human force had destroyed 12 Vorthen ships. The aliens were so shocked by the brutal tactics that they forgot to fight back effectively. "Sir, the main fleet is arriving," Pete shouted from his escape pod. Danny looked up to see the most beautiful sight of his life. 200 human warships were coming out of hyperspace, their hulls bristling with weapons. At the front was the U.E.'s Vengeance, Captain Steve Collins' flagship. "All Vorthen vessels, this is Admiral Trevor Walsh," came a voice over the radio. "You have 10 seconds to surrender or be destroyed." The Vorthen commander was named Kexther, and he had conquered 15 star systems. He had never lost a battle. The idea of surrendering to primitive aliens was insulting. "You dare threaten the Vorthen Empire?" he replied. "We are the masters of this galaxy." "Wrong answer," Admiral Walsh said calmly. What happened next would be remembered as the Kepler Prime massacre. The human fleet did not try to disable the Vorthen ships or force them to surrender. They simply erased them from existence. Human weapons were different from what most aliens used. While other species preferred clean energy beams, humans had brought kinetic weapons, nuclear missiles, and plasma cannons. The Vorthen shields, designed to stop energy attacks, were useless against solid projectiles moving at incredible speeds. Major Sarah Kim was aboard the U.E. Attribution when it began, boarding actions against damaged Vorthen vessels. She led a squad of Marines through the corridors of an alien warship, her powered armor making her look like a metal demon. "Contact front," shouted Sergeant First Class Tony Mitchell as they encountered Vorthan soldiers. The aliens were tall and thin, with gray skin and large black eyes. They carried energy weapons and wore light armor. Against most enemies, they would have been formidable. Against humans from Earth, they were helpless. Sarah moved through the ship like a force of nature. Her armor let her survive in the vacuum of space, and her weapons could punch through Vorthan defenses like paper. The alien soldiers had never faced anything like her. "Please, we surrender." One of the Vorthans begged in broken English. Sarah looked at the alien through her helmet's visor. "You were bombing cities full of children 5 minutes ago. Surrender is not an option." Meanwhile, Dr. Helen Clark was making first contact with the surviving Zephyrians on the planet below. Her shuttle landed near one of the crystal cities that had not been completely destroyed. The Zephyrians were even more beautiful in person than in the pictures. They looked like trees made of living crystal, with leaves that glowed with soft light. Their voices sounded like wind chimes when they spoke. "You came," whispered their leader, a tall being named Veltar. "We thought no one would answer our call." Helen felt tears in her eyes. These gentle creatures had been facing extinction, and they had given up hope. "We heard you. Humans always answer when innocent people call for help. But the Vorthans are so strong. How can you defeat them?" Helen looked up at the sky, where the battle was still raging. Human ships were systematically destroying every Vorthan vessel. The Vorthans made a mistake. They thought being strong meant being the biggest bully in the galaxy. Humans learned that being strong means protecting those who cannot protect themselves. The battle lasted 3 hours. When it was over, not a single Vorthan ship remained functional. Some had been destroyed completely. Others were drifting wrecks with their crews dead or captured. Admiral Walsh stood on the bridge of his flagship, looking at the reports. 50 Vorthan warships destroyed. 6 human ships lost, mostly from the initial ramming attacks. It was the most one-sided space battle in recorded history. "Sir, we're getting a transmission from the Vorthan home fleet," reported his communications. "Officer, put it through." The face that appeared on the screen was different from the soldiers they had fought. This Vorthan wore elaborate armor and had scars across his face. He was clearly a high-ranking officer. "I am War Leader Zexmar of the Crimson Armada," the alien said. "You have attacked vessels of the Vorthan Empire. This act of war will not go unpunished." Admiral Walsh smiled coldly. "War Leader, you seem to misunderstand the situation. We did not start a war. We finished one. The Vorthans have been committing genocide for decades. Today, that ends. You know nothing of galactic politics, primitive. The Vorthans are the strongest military force in this sector. We have crushed 100 worlds. And now you've met humans. We suggest you learn the difference." The transmission ended, but Admiral Walsh knew this was just the beginning. The Vorthan Empire would not ignore the destruction of an entire fleet. They would send more ships, bigger ships, and deadlier weapons. But as he looked at the rescued Zephyrian cities and the grateful faces of the people they had saved, Admiral Walsh felt only determination. Humanity had taken its first step into galactic politics, and they had made their position clear. They would not stand by while innocents suffered. They would not negotiate with genocidal empires. And they would not stop until every threat to peaceful species was eliminated. The Vorthans wanted a war. They were about to get one. Emperor Thex sat on his crystal throne, looking at the reports from Kepler Prime. 50 ships destroyed. An entire fleet wiped out by unknown aliens in 3 hours. In 800 years of Vorthan expansion, nothing like this had ever happened. How is this possible? He asked War Leader Zexmar, who knelt before the throne. The humans fight like nothing we have seen before, my Emperor. They do not try to disable our ships. They destroy them completely. They ram our vessels with their own ships. They board our cruisers and kill everyone inside. Emperor Thex felt something he had not experienced in centuries: fear. The Vorthan Empire was built on intimidation. They conquered peaceful species by showing overwhelming force. But what do you do when the enemy is not afraid to die? Send the Crimson Armada, the Emperor commanded. All 500 ships. Crush these humans before they can spread their madness to other species. 3 weeks later, Fleet Admiral Rachel Stone received the report from her scouts. The largest Vorthan fleet in history was heading toward the Nexus Gate, a strategic point that controlled access to both human and Zephyrian space. 500 ships, she said to Captain Greg Martin, who commanded her destroyer squadron. They're bringing everything they have. Greg looked at the tactical display. The human fleet had grown since Kepler Prime, but they still only had 300 ships. We'll be outnumbered again. Good, Rachel replied. I was getting worried this would be too easy. Rachel had been born in Alaska, where winter could kill you if you made a single mistake. Her grandfather had been a fisherman on the Bering Sea, one of the most dangerous jobs on Earth. She came from a long line of people who faced impossible odds and won. Nexus Gate was a natural bottleneck in space, where gravitational forces from nearby stars created a narrow passage between solar systems. The Vorthans had to come through that passage to reach human space that Rachel positioned her fleet in a defensive formation around the gate. But she had no intention of fighting defensively. All ships, this is Admiral Stone. Today we show the galaxy what happens when you threaten innocent people. Today we end the Vorthan Empire. When the Crimson Armada arrived, they expected to find humans hiding behind defensive positions. Instead, they found empty space. The human fleet was nowhere to be seen. Where are they? Demanded war leader Zexmar from his flagship, that his answer came in the form of nuclear explosions. The humans had planted mines throughout the gate passage, turning the narrow space into a death trap. Vorthan ships began exploding before they even saw their enemies. It's an ambush. Zexmar screamed over the radio. All ships, retreat and regroup. But there was nowhere to retreat to. Captain Greg Martin's destroyers appeared behind the Vorthan fleet, cutting off their escape route. The aliens were trapped in the passage, with mines ahead and human warships behind them. This is Captain Martin to all Vorthan vessels. You came here to commit genocide. We came here to stop you. The difference is, we're going to succeed. The battle that followed was like nothing the galaxy had ever seen. Vorthan ships tried to use their superior numbers, but the narrow passage worked against them. They could not bring all their weapons to bear at once. Human ships, smaller and more maneuverable, darted between the alien vessels like sharks in a feeding frenzy. They used tactics that other species would consider insane: ramming attacks, boarding actions in the middle of battle, and weapons that other civilizations had banned as too cruel. Sergeant First Class Tony Mitchell found himself leading a boarding party onto a Vorthan command ship. The aliens had never designed their vessels to repel boarders, especially not boarders who could fight in zero gravity and survive in hard vacuum. Move, 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 Tony shouted as his Marines blasted through the ship's hull. The Vorthans inside were not wearing armor that could protect them from decompression. Most of them died instantly when the hull was breached. Tony and his squad moved through the ship like a force of nature. They had trained for this kind of fighting on Earth, where soldiers learned to fight in every environment from underwater to the tops of mountains. The Vorthans had never faced anything like them. Bridge secured, Tony reported over his radio. Enemy command staff eliminated. Similar scenes were playing out across the battlefield. Human Marines were taking control of Vorthan ships faster than the aliens could respond. The Empire's technological advantages meant nothing when humans were fighting inside their vessels. Dr. Karen White watched the battle from the command ship, documenting everything for the historical record. What she saw amazed her. The Vorthen Empire had seemed unstoppable, but they were falling apart under human pressure. It's not just their military, she told Admiral Stone. Their whole society is built on the idea that they're the strongest species in the galaxy. When that idea breaks, everything else breaks with it. She was right. Reports were coming in from across Vorthen space. Worlds that had been conquered decades ago were rebelling. Species that had been enslaved were rising up against their oppressors. The news of human victories was spreading faster than the Empire could contain it. Admiral, we're getting surrender requests from 17 Vorthen worlds, reported the communications officer. They want to surrender before we even get there. Rachel looked at the tactical display. The Crimson Armada was almost completely destroyed. Only 30 Vorthen ships remained functional, and they were fleeing toward their home system. Let them run, she said. They'll spread the word about what happens when you threaten innocent people. But Emperor Thex was not ready to surrender. When the survivors of the Crimson Armada limped back to Vorthen Prime, he had them executed for cowardice. Then he gathered every remaining ship in the Empire for one final battle. If we must die, we will take these humans with us, he declared. To his remaining commanders, prepare the Death Fleet. We will make our last stand at the homeworld. The final battle came 2 months later. Admiral Stone led the human fleet to Vorthen Prime, the heart of the Empire that had terrorized the galaxy for centuries. The planet was heavily defended, with orbital weapons platforms and the last 500 ships of the Vorthen military. This is Admiral Stone to Emperor Thex. You have one chance to surrender and face trial for your crimes. Refuse, and we will show you the same mercy you showed the Zephyrians. The Emperor's response was to order all weapons to fire at once. Battle of Vorthen Prime lasted 8 hours. When it was over, the orbital defenses were gone, the Death Fleet was scrap metal, and human marines were storming the Imperial Palace. Tony Mitchell kicked down the door to the throne room, his rifle ready. Emperor Thex sat on his crystal throne, surrounded by his dead guards. You cannot kill me, the Emperor said. I am immortal. I am eternal. The Vorthen Empire will last forever. Tony looked at the alien who had ordered the deaths of billions of innocent people. Your empire ends today, and you're about to find out that humans don't believe in immortal emperors. The last shot of the war echoed through the throne room. Emperor Thex, ruler of the greatest military empire in galactic history, died on his throne, killed by a sergeant from Detroit who had joined the military to pay for college. When the news reached Earth, people celebrated in the streets. Humanity had won its first interstellar war, but Admiral Stone knew this was just the beginning. What do we do now? Asked Captain Martin as they stood on the bridge, looking at the conquered Vorthen homeworld. Now we make sure this never happens. Again, Rachel replied, we're going to build a peace that lasts. And if anyone tries to break it, they'll learn what we learned today. What's that? That humans don't just fight wars. We end them. The Vorthen Empire, which had ruled through fear for 8 centuries, was finished. In its place, something new was beginning. Something built not on conquest, but on protection. Not on fear, but on the simple human belief that innocent people deserve to live in peace. The galaxy would never be the same. 3 months after the fall of Vorthen Prime, Captain Jake Morrison stood on the balcony of his new office, looking out at the city below. The former Vorthen capital had been renamed New Hope, and the dark towers of the Empire were being torn down and replaced with parks and schools. Jake had been promoted to High Governor of the former Vorthen territories. It was not a job he had wanted, but Admiral Sullivan had been clear. Someone had to make sure the peace lasted, and humans were the only ones strong enough to enforce it. "Sir, the weekly report," said his assistant, Lieutenant Mary Davis, as she handed him a tablet. The numbers were encouraging. Crime was down 70%. Food production was up. The former slave worlds were rebuilding their civilizations with human help. "Any problems?" Jake asked. 3 pirate groups tried to raid shipping lanes near the Kepler system. Captain Brooks dealt with them. Jake smiled. Danny Brooks had survived his ramming attack at the first battle and had been given command of a patrol squadron. Pirates learned quickly that human ships did not bother with warning shots. Across the galaxy, similar changes were happening. Dr. Lisa Grant had established translation centers on every former Vorthan world, helping different species communicate and work together. Her work had become the foundation for the new Galactic Peace Accords. On the Zephyrian homeworld, Prime Harmonist Veltar walked through the crystal gardens that had been rebuilt after the war. The scars of Vorthan bombardment were almost gone, replaced by new growth that sparkled in the sunlight. "Your people are remarkable," he said to Dr. Helen Clark, who was visiting to check on reconstruction efforts. "We still do not understand how beings capable of such violence can also show such compassion." Helen looked at the beautiful crystal, trees growing around them. "On Earth, we learned that sometimes you have to fight to protect the things you love. The same strength that makes us dangerous to our enemies makes us loyal to our friends." Veltar's leaves chimed softly in the breeze, a sound that Helen had learned meant he was thinking deeply. "The other species in the galaxy are afraid of you. They see what you did to the Vorthans and worry that humans might turn that power against them." "Let them worry," Helen replied. "Fear keeps people honest. As long as they don't hurt innocent people, they have nothing to fear from us." The conversation was interrupted by a communication from space. A new alien species, the Kalrani Federation, was requesting to meet with human representatives. They had heard about the fall of the Vorthan Empire and wanted to discuss something important. "Another species wanting protection," Helen said as she read the message. "That's the 15th one this month." The Kalrani were a bird-like species that had been hiding from the Vorthans for decades. Their representative, a graceful being with silver feathers, met with Commander Nick Davis at the Terran Embassy on the neutral world of Haven Station. "We come seeking the protection of Earth," the Kalrani diplomat said, her voice like singing. "The Vorthans destroyed our colonies and enslaved our people. Now that they are gone, we wish to rebuild under human guidance." Nick had held dozens of these meetings. Species across the galaxy were realizing that the old order was gone, and they wanted to be on the right side of the new one. "What can your people offer in return?" "We are skilled engineers and artists. We can help build the new galactic civilization you are creating. And if we discover you have been mistreating other species?" The Kalrani's feathers ruffled with nervous energy. Everyone knew the human reputation by now. They protected the innocent and destroyed those who preyed on the weak. There was no middle ground. "We have always been peaceful. We seek only to live in harmony with others." Nick made a note on his tablet. The Kalrani would be accepted into the Terran Protectorate, bringing the total number of protected species to 47. It was growing every week. Meanwhile, the Galactic Council was meeting on the ancient world of Concordia. For thousands of years, they had been the closest thing to a galactic government, but they had been powerless to stop the Vorthans. Now they faced a new reality. Humans had done what they could not. Ambassador Claire Watson sat at the council table, surrounded by representatives from hundreds of species. She was the first human to address the council, and every alien in the room was watching her carefully. "The Terran Federation accepts your invitation to join the Galactic Council," she said. "But we will not be just another member. We will be the enforcement arm of galactic law." The council leader, an ancient being called Wise Singer Orth, spoke. carefully. Ambassador Watson, the Council has always preferred diplomacy to violence. We seek to resolve conflicts through discussion and compromise. Claire looked around the room at the assembled aliens. Most of them were from safe, peaceful worlds where conflict was rare. They had never learned that some problems could not be solved with words. Honored counselors, for decades you discussed and compromised while the Vorthans committed genocide. How many species died while you were talking? The room fell silent. It was a painful truth that no one wanted to acknowledge. Humans offer a different approach, Claire continued. We will talk to those who will listen. But for those who prefer violence, we will speak their language fluently. The Council voted to accept human membership with special enforcement powers. It was not unanimous, but the alternative was having humans operate outside the Council entirely. And that scared them even more. 6 months after the war ended, Admiral Kate Sullivan stood in her new office at Terran Defense Command. Through her window, she could see Earth in all its blue-green beauty. It looked exactly the same as before the war, but everything had changed. Ma'am, the monthly reports from all sectors, said her aide. Handing her a stack of documents. The reports told an amazing story. Galactic trade was up 300%. Wars between species had dropped to almost zero. Piracy was nearly extinct. The mere presence of human patrol fleets had brought peace to areas that had been violent for centuries. Any new threats? Kate asked. 3 star systems have reported suspicious military buildups. The hegemony of Carthol appears to be preparing for expansion into neutral space. Kate made a note. The hegemony would receive a visit from Captain Steve Collins and the UE's Vengeance. They would be given a simple choice: stop their military buildup or face the same fate as the Vorthans. Also, ma'am, we've received a request from the Zephyrian Coalition. They want to name their new capital city after Earth. Kate smiled. The Zephyrians had become humanity's closest allies, their peaceful nature balanced by human protection. Together, they were building something new, a galactic civilization based on cooperation instead of conquest. The intercom buzzed. Admiral, priority message from Deep Space Monitoring Station Epsilon 7. Kate recognized the name. That was where it all started, where Jake Morrison and Lisa Grant first received the alien distress call that changed everything. Admiral Sullivan. This is Captain Morrison. We're detecting another signal from outside the galaxy. This one's different. It's not a distress call. What is it? It's a warning, ma'am. Someone out there knows what we did to the Vorthans. They're telling us that bigger threats are coming. Much bigger. Kate felt a familiar chill run down her spine. Humanity had just finished one war, and now it looked like another was coming. But she was not afraid. Humans had proven they could handle anything the galaxy threw at them. Prepare the fleets, Captain. If someone wants to threaten the peace we've built, they'll learn what the Vorthans learned. What's that, Mom? That humans don't just fight wars to win them. We fight them to make sure they never happen again. Outside her window, Earth continued its ancient rotation, carrying 8 billion people who had no idea that their species had become the protectors of the galaxy. They went about their daily lives, raising families, building dreams, and creating art, while human fleets patrolled the stars to ensure their peaceful existence could continue. The aliens had sent an SOS hoping for help. Instead, they had awakened something that would reshape the galaxy forever. Humanity had found its place among the stars, not as conquerors, but as guardians. And they would defend that peace with the same determination that had built their civilization on one of the most dangerous worlds in the universe. The galaxy was finally safe. And it would stay that way as long as humans drew breath among the stars.